Have you ever found yourself just standing in a perfectly quiet kitchen, like the kids are finally asleep, nothing bad has happened today, and yet you are suddenly weeping while matching socks?
Yeah,
You're
you
just folding a tiny t-shirt, the house is still, and out of nowhere, you are entirely overwhelmed by this crushing, inexplicable wave of sadness.
right. And it's one of the most isolating experiences a person can have. I mean, truly.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, your logical brain is scanning the room for a threat. Right.
hmm
It's scanning the day for a disaster and finding absolutely nothing.
Wow. Yeah. You're just thinking, why am I crying?
Exactly. You think, well, I am crying, therefore something terrible must have just occurred. But there is no immediate crisis. There's just the laundry, the dishes, and this overwhelming feeling of drowning.
And that profound disconnect, between the mundane task in front of you and the intense emotional agony inside of you, that is exactly what we are exploring in our deep dive today.
It's such an important topic.
It really is. We're looking deep into the architecture of parental burnout, spousal exhaustion, and the incredibly heavy silent weight of self-sacrifice. Because if you are someone who constantly, reflexively puts the needs of everyone else ahead of your own, well, you know exactly what this exhaustion feels like.
Feel it in your bones.
Right. And it's not the kind of tired that a weekend getaway or, a better sleep schedule can fix. It feels systemic. It feels like you are slowly, methodically disappearing inside your own life despite doing everything right.
That's the crucial distinction we need to make right from the start. We are not talking about standard physical fatigue here.
Okay, so what are we talking about?
We're examining the underlying psychological mechanisms of a very specific, deeply ingrained phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
It's the belief that if I just endure, if I just keep my head down and absorb the stress, the family runs smoothly.
Which society loves, right? Like, on the surface, our culture praises that.
Oh, absolutely. It sounds noble. It sounds like the very definition of a good parent or a devoted partner.
Yeah.
But underneath that exact belief is quietly dismantling the individual's psychological foundation.
Man, that is heavy. Let's think back for a moment to the early days,
Yeah.
to the dating days or the honeymoon phase of your adult identity.
Oh, yeah, the golden era.
Right. There is this glittering, vibrant energy to that period.
Yeah.
You are seen. You are praised. You might get a late night phone call from your partner. And even if you just had the most grueling, soul-crushing day at the office, just the sound of their voice.
Completely changes everything.
Yes, the realization that you are the center of someone's universe, it completely energizes you. It acts as a buffer against the world.
Well, because during that phase, your individual identity is being constantly actively validated.
Yeah.
You exist as the primary character in your own story, right?
Yep.
And you are receiving immediate positive reinforcement for simply being you. Your needs, your quirks, your spontaneous desires, they are front and center.
You don't have to earn your space.
Exactly. You don't have to earn your space in the relationship through labor. You just exist, and you were celebrated for it. And neurologically speaking, that establishes a psychological baseline of feeling deeply safe and seen.
But then real life accelerates. You get married, maybe you have kids, careers intensify. You walk through the door at 6 p.m., and that glittering feeling is completely gone.
Just replaced by demands.
Right. In its place is a towering mountain of chores. There's the immediate physical demand of childcare. There's the invisible mental load of trying to plan tomorrow's logistical puzzle while you are still, physically cleaning up from today.
It's relentless.
It is. And the insidious thing is, it doesn't happen overnight. You don't just wake up one Tuesday and realize you've abandoned yourself.
Oh, it's a very slow fade.
Yeah. Initially, we tell ourselves a very convincing lie. We say, I'll just endure this for a little while. It's just a busy season. Once the kids are in school or once this project at work is done, I'll get back to me.
And just for a little while might actually be the most dangerous phrase in the human psychological vocabulary.
Wait, really? Why is that?
Because the human brain is highly adaptive, and it prioritizes efficiency over almost everything else. What starts as a temporary conscious sprint of self-sacrifice very quickly solidifies into the new unconscious baseline.
It just becomes the new normal.
It morphs into a permanent state of normal. The brain stops flagging this exhaustion as a temporary emergency, right? And it starts accepting it as the required rent you have to pay just to exist within your own family structure.
Wow. Which leads to this heartbreaking reality of how our brains actually change when we live in that state for too long. There is this tragic math to self-sacrifice.
The cognitive pivot, yeah.
Yeah, let's say someone who has been running on this endless treadmill of endurance finally gets an hour to themselves. They try to think of something they actually want to do, something just for joy.
And what happens?
But instead of feeling anticipation or pleasure, their brain instantly boots up a spreadsheet.
Exactly. It's an automatic cost-benefit analysis.
Right. Instead of, oh, I'd love to go for a run or I want to read a book in a cafe, the brain instantly fires back with, well, how much does a coffee cost? Do I really have 45 minutes or should I start the laundry?
If I leave, who is going to watch the toddler?
Yes. Will my partner be annoyed that they have to pause their video game? It becomes brutal. And the result is that years go by without the person experiencing genuine, unadulterated enjoyment.
Yeah.
Every single moment of pleasure has a suffocating logistical tax attached to it.
If you look at the cognitive load occurring in those moments, the brain's reward center is being completely overridden by its threat detection and logistics centers.
So joy becomes a threat.
In a way, yes. Enjoyment is no longer processed as a natural restorative experience. It is processed as a complex problem that requires solving. And when joy requires that much executive function, that much mental calculation, we naturally stop seeking it.
Because we're just too tired to do the math.
Exactly. The human nervous system is designed to conserve energy. We just shut down the part of ourselves that desires things because the math required to fulfill those desires is just too exhausting to calculate.
Okay, wait, let's pause and really unpack this, because I think a lot of people just chalk this up to adulthood. Isn't this just what getting older is?
That's a very common misconception.
Right, like the responsibilities pile up, the water gets hot so slowly we don't realize we're boiling, and eventually we just accept that life is mostly chores. Why is this specifically a psychological trauma response and not just, the inevitable reality of having a mortgage and a family?
It's a fair question.
I mean, why do we actively default to self-neglect instead of turning to our partner and saying, hey, I am drowning here, you need to take half of this load?
Because for the people experiencing this deepest level of burnout, asking for help feels infinitely more dangerous than suffering in silence.
Dangerous, how so?
And the reason for that fundamentally rewrites how we understand this kind of exhaustion. This isn't just about the current workload. We have to look at the underlying blueprint of how this person learned to survive in the world long before they had a mortgage or a spouse.
Oh, wow. So this goes way back.
Way back. We are dealing with a deeply ingrained childhood survival mechanism. It's the unconscious belief that essentially endurance is correct.
Okay, so this isn't born in the marriage.
Not at all. It is heavily reinforced by the marriage or by the intense demands of parenting, but the seed was planted decades earlier. Let's look at the classic environments where this develops, right?
Yeah, paint a picture for me.
Picture a young child who realizes very early on that their parents are constantly stressed, financially strained, or emotionally volatile. That child seeking safety makes a brilliant but tragic calculation.
They decide to actively try not to bother their parents.
Yes, they become the easy kid. Or consider the child who is scolded for showing big emotions, the one told to quiet down, stop crying, or go to their room until they can be pleasant.
Oh, or the child who gets parentified. Like, you're the older sister, you need to be patient. You have to understand that your little brother needs more attention right now.
Exactly. That happens all the time. And what is happening in the nervous system of that child in those moments is a fundamental rewiring of how they perceive safety and connection.
Because kids need that connection to survive.
It's literal biology. For a child, connection to the primary caregiver isn't just nice to have, it is life or death. If the child's brain registers that expressing a need or showing sadness or asking for help causes the caregiver to become stressed, angry, or to withdraw their affection.
The child learns a devastating lesson.
They learn, my needs are dangerous, my emotions threaten my survival. Suppressing what I want and enduring discomfort keeps the peace, and keeping the peace keeps me safe.
Wow. So endurance is correct isn't a personality trait.
No, not at all.
It's not that they are naturally just so giving and selfless. It is a highly evolved survival strategy. They learned that shrinking themselves is the price of admission for love.
Yes, that is perfectly stated. And you don't just magically drop a foundational survival strategy, but you turn 28, you got married.
Right. It's hardwired.
Those neural pathways are deep, well-worn grooves. You carry that programming straight into your adult relationships. When the intense stress of marriage, running a household, and raising children hits, the adult brain panics.
And defaults to what it knows.
Exactly. What does the brain do in a panic? It uses its oldest, most trusted tool. It says, things are chaotic, the system is stressed. If I just endure more, if I require less, if I completely shrink my own needs, the system will stabilize and I will be loved.
Man, that makes so much sense, but it also creates a terrifying physical reality.
Uh,
If we learn early on that suppressing our needs equals safety, and we drag that heavy baggage into our adult lives, I mean, where does all that suppressed energy go?
has to go somewhere.
Right. If you are angry that you are doing 90% of the housework, but your childhood programming won't let you express that anger because it feels unsafe, that anger doesn't just evaporate.
It absolutely does not evaporate. Emotions are not just abstract concepts. They are real physiological events in the body. They are energy.
Okay.
When you feel anger or resentment or profound sadness, your body literally prepares to take action. If you constantly put a lid on that energy, if you force it down, it expands in the dark, it stews, and eventually, because it cannot be destroyed, it is forced to take a new shape.
It mutates.
It mutates entirely.
And that mutation shows up in these incredibly specific, almost universal coping mechanisms. When you are constantly sacrificing yourself, you end up with this massive internal void, and you try to fill it with anything that doesn't require emotional vulnerability.
Right.
It's the person who turns to intense binge eating late at night when the rest of the house is finally asleep.
Right.
Or the person who completely dissociates by over-immersing themselves in hours and hours of television dramas.
We call it escapism, but it's really a sensory override.
Yeah.
You were trying to drown out the internal alarm bells.
Yeah, but it's described with such a specific, heavy feeling. It isn't the joyful escapism of really loving a good meal or a great show. It's an act of desperation. You are trying so hard to enjoy the food or the screen, but you only feel this overwhelming, hollow emptiness.
Incredibly bleak.
It's like pouring a glass of water into the Sahara Desert. The sand just violently swallows it and nothing grows. You eat the ice cream, but the internal void doesn't shrink by a single millimeter.
Because that emptiness is the hallmark symptom of chronic emotional suppression. Think of your emotional receptors like a volume dial.
Yeah, okay, a volume dial.
When you continuously numb the negative emotions, the resentment at your partner, the frustration with the kids, the grief of losing your independence, you inadvertently numb the positive emotions too.
Because you can't pick and choose.
Exactly. The human nervous system cannot selectively numb. You can't say, I'm going to turn off the anger, but keep the joy receptors wide open. If you turn down the volume on your pain so you can survive your daily life, you turn down the volume on your joy.
The receptors simply power down.
That is why the ice cream doesn't taste good anymore, and the TV show just feels like meaningless flashing colors in a dark room. You are fundamentally disconnected from your own capacity to feel.
But the anger doesn't just turn into numbness. This is where the psychology gets so layered. Unexpressed anger, especially the boiling frustration of living with a partner who isn't pulling their weight, it often mutates into something that looks completely paradoxical on the outside.
Yes.
It transforms into excessive caretaking.
It seems entirely counterintuitive to the logical brain. If you are deeply resentful of someone for not helping you, why on earth would your response be to do more for them?
Right. But it's because the direct path is blocked. The person is terrified to look their partner in the eye and express raw anger because their ancient childhood programming is screaming, anger is dangerous, anger destroys relationships.
They literally cannot speak the words.
So they can't yell, they can't demand equity. Instead, they work excessively, frantically hard. They clean more aggressively. They micromanage the kids' schedules to perfection. They hover over their partner, anticipating needs before they even arise.
It's a silent performance.
Exactly. They are using their labor to silently scream, look at how hard I am working, understand my pain, see my sacrifice.
It is an incredible defense mechanism. They are literally weaponizing their caretaking.
Yeah.
They are taking all of their repressed rage, sorrow, and exhaustion and channeling it into the only socially sanctioned release valve available to them.
Yeah.
Because society loves a self-sacrificing mother or a devoted, long-suffering spouse. Society praises that.
Yeah.
So the individual forces their anger out through the doing things for others faucet. It is an indirect, desperately sad cry for visibility.
That analogy is so perfect. It's like water in a sealed, pressurized pipe. If it can't come out of the anger faucet, it forces its way out of the only open faucet.
The caretaking faucet.
And understanding that indirect cry for help explains why it hurts so incredibly deeply when that care is rejected.
Oh, the rejection is devastating.
Imagine you are operating in that state. You are exhausted to your bones. You are hovering around your partner or your teenager, offering to do things they didn't even ask for because you are desperately trying to get them to see your worth, and they just casually brush it off.
Yeah.
They look up from their phone and say, "That's enough," or "I don't need you to do that. Just sit down and relax."
Now, to a healthy, unburdened nervous system, hearing "I don't need you to do that" is a relief. It means you are off the clock. You can go read a book.
Exactly. But to the person trapped in this trauma response, that casual dismissal absolutely shatters them. It sparks genuine devastation or sudden blinding rage.
Because of what they're actually rejecting.
Right. And it's not because they are overly sensitive or because they really just love matching socks. It's because their displaced, mutated cry for help, all those stranded emotions that they poured into this one allowed outlet, was just firmly rejected.
It feels like a personal attack.
The family member thinks they're just rejecting a plate of food or a folded shirt, but the individual feels like their actual soul, their silent, desperate plea to be recognized, has been shoved away.
The translation occurring in the brain is catastrophic. The family says, "I don't need my laundry done," but the individual's wounded nervous system hears, "I do not see your pain. I do not value your sacrifice. You are invisible to me."
Oh, that hurts just to hear.
And the tragedy is that this perfectly reinforces the original childhood wound. The brain says, "See, my feelings aren't understood and nobody cares how much I endure." The cycle completes itself and the isolation deepens.
Okay, so if we step back and look at this objectively, the family's current actions, like the husband not noticing the clean kitchen, the teenager brushing off the care, the endless cycle of chores, these are just triggers.
They're the match, not the gunpowder.
Right. They're aggravating the symptoms of the pressure pipe. But what is the actual disease? Where's the root of the pain really anchored?
To find the root, we have to look past the kitchen sink. We have to look past the oblivious spouse.
So let's bring it all the way back to the image we started with. You are standing by the dryer. You are crying while folding laundry. The tears are hot and they are fast and they are utterly overwhelming. The oblivious behaving of your partner, the crushing stress of your job, the sheer bone-deep physical fatigue of raising children, those things are the match.
But they are not the gunpowder. The psychological consensus on this is profound. The root cause of that specific, overwhelming grief is not located in the present day. We are dealing with the reality of the inner child.
And we should clarify that because...
Yes, I want to be clear, because that term can sometimes sound like a pop psychology buzzword.
Hmm.
But we are not talking about a metaphorical concept here. We are talking about a very real, frozen psychological state within your neurology.
It's the brain holding on to those early emotional experiences with a literal death grip.
Yes, from a neurological standpoint, traumatic or highly stressful emotional memories, especially those formed when we are young, when our brains are highly plastic and we lack complex emotional processing tools, they are stored differently than normal memories.
How so?
Well, if you remember what you ate for breakfast last Tuesday, that memory has a timestamp. Your brain knows it is in the past. But trauma and chronic emotional neglect is stored in the amygdala without a timestamp.
Oh, wow.
The brain files it away with all the original, visceral, emotional intensity perfectly intact.
So when a present-day event happens, like your partner ignoring your effort, it acts like a tripwire.
Exactly. The brain doesn't just remember the past feeling of being ignored. It literally relives it. The nervous system reacts as if the original threat to survival is happening right now in this kitchen.
That is terrifying.
It is. The root of the pain you feel over the laundry is the profound childhood loneliness. It is the ancient despair of a little kid realizing, my feelings aren't understood. It is the decades-old, terrifying sadness of, nobody notices my endurance, so I am not safe.
And that child is still there.
The wounded child is, neurologically speaking, still alive inside the adult's mind, crying out and asking for someone to finally save them through these sudden, unexplained adult tears.
So, if your partner or your kids or your boss aren't the actual root of the problem, does that mean we've been fighting the wrong enemy this whole time?
In many ways, yes.
Is the adult mind just using today's stress, the messy house, the unwashed laundry, as a convenient, tangible excuse to finally process a wound that is 30 years old?
That is precisely what is happening.
Yeah.
The adult mind desperately wants to resolve this ancient pain. The pressure has to release. But the adult ego can't just randomly drop to the floor and start weeping about feeling abandoned at age 7.
Right, that feels illogical.
It feels entirely unsafe to the adult brain, so it attaches that massive, heavy 7-year-old grief to the 35-year-old's unwashed laundry. It gives the pain a present-day, socially acceptable target. You can yell at your husband about the dishes. You can't really yell at him about your mother ignoring you in 1995.
Wow.
But the reality is, fighting your husband about the laundry will never, ever heal the 7-year-old's grief.
Attaching 7-year-old grief to 35-year-old laundry. That is a massive paradigm shift. Because it means that no matter what the people around you do, they can't fix it.
They really can.
If your spouse suddenly became the most attentive, chore-doing, perfect partner in the world, it wouldn't cure the burnout.
It wouldn't. It might relieve some physical fatigue, sure, but the deep weeping over the socks exhaustion would remain. No therapist, no spouse, no amount of perfectly behaved children can heal this specific wound because they weren't there when the wound was created.
Right.
And they aren't the ones the inner child is desperately waiting for. There was only one person with the authority to heal that timeline. You, the present-day, capable adult. You are the only hero your nervous system will accept.
Which brings us to the hardest but most hopeful part of this whole journey. If we are the only ones who can fix it, how do we actually do it?
That is the big question.
Because we can't time travel. We can't go back to 1995 and intervene. So how do we restructure this internal reality?
This requires moving from intellectual understanding to an active somatic practice. The psychological intervention for this involves a highly specific, deeply practical visualization. And it is vital to understand that this is not just thinking happy thoughts or reciting affirmations in the mirror.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. It is an active mental intervention designed to literally cross-wire those time-stampless memories in the amygdala with a new experience of safety.
The specifics of how to do this are incredibly moving. To start, you have to find a quiet moment and construct a very specific mental space behind your closed eyes. You build a quiet, white-lit room in your mind.
A completely neutral space.
Right. It needs to feel completely safe, perfectly neutral, and entirely isolated from your present-day stress. No laundry, no kids, no work emails in this room. And inside this pristine space, you are instructed to find the little girl or the little boy inside. You look for the inner child.
And you must visualize them with unflinching honesty.
Yes, the visualization demands vivid, realistic detail. You don't picture a happy, polished school photo of yourself. You look for the truth of how that part of you feels. That child might be wearing tattered clothes. She might have messy, uncombed hair. Her eyes might be red and swollen from crying alone.
Because she has been alone.
She looks neglected because emotionally she has been neglected.
And the tattered clothes and the messy hair are vital symbolic elements. The subconscious mind doesn't communicate in English. It communicates in symbols and imagery. The tattered clothes represent exactly how long this vital part of you has been ignored.
Shoved into the dark closet of your mind.
Exactly, in favor of adult responsibilities and endless endurance. Acknowledging her disheveled, suffering state is the absolute first step in validating her pain. You aren't forcing her to clean up and look pretty for you the way she had to for the world. You are bearing witness to her exactly as she is.
Then comes the actual interaction. You don't just stand across the room and observe her. It requires physical, albeit mental, action. You, the adult self, walk over to her. And you don't tower over her like an authority figure.
No, you must get down.
You kneel down so that you are perfectly at her eye level.
Because you are leveling the power dynamic. You are establishing immediate physical and emotional safety.
You reach out. You gently touch her chin. You lift her face so that she has to look into your eyes. You smile with total warmth and acceptance. And then you speak to her. You say, "It's okay now. I came to get you."
That phrase is everything.
You wipe her tears and you say, "I am so sorry for everything until now. I'm sorry I left you alone, but it's okay. I will protect you from now on."
I came to get you. There is an immense amount of neurological and psychological weight in that single phrase. It directly targets the absolute core of the childhood wound, the terror of abandonment. By saying, "I came to get you," you are telling your own highly sensitized nervous system, you are no longer alone. The wait is over. You've been found by someone capable of keeping you safe.
And the apology.
The apology, "I'm sorry for everything until now," that is the adult ego taking full responsibility for having suppressed and ignored this child's needs for years in the pursuit of being good and enduring. It bridges the gap between the past and the present.
It's an incredibly intense emotional experience to actually walk through that visualization. But practically speaking, in the real world, how does this work? Is this a one-time profound meditation?
Oh no, definitely not a one-time thing.
It feels a bit like realizing you accidentally left a kid at the supermarket 20 years ago and you suddenly panic, drive back, put them in the car, and now they're safe. But does the kid stay in the car? How often do we need to check the mental supermarket?
That analogy perfectly captures the initial rescue, but the reality of psychological healing is that it is not a one-and-done magical event. You don't just pick the kid up from the supermarket once and they are perfectly adjusted forever.
Right. Because the supermarket is the landscape of your daily life. It is the triggers. It is the messy kitchen, the curt tone from your spouse, the overwhelming calendar.
So the kid is going to keep getting triggered by the daily life.
Exactly. Whenever you feel that sudden, totally disproportionate pain, the tears welling up over the laundry, the sudden white-hot rage at a minor traffic inconvenience, the urge to emotionally shut down, that is the signal.
That's the kid.
That is the inner child crying out from the supermarket aisle. In that exact moment, the practice requires you to pause your adult reaction and ask internally, how old is the me that is crying right now?
You pinpoint the age of this specific pain.
Yes. Is it the 5-year-old who felt totally invisible when their sibling was born? Is it the 10-year-old who was told their anger was too much and made them unlovable? You identify the age and you mentally visit that specific version of yourself in the white room.
You sit with them. You sit on the floor with them. You let them cry. You stay until their nervous system calms down. And then, crucially, as you return to your adult reality to handle the present-day situation, you don't say goodbye to the child. You say, I'll be back.
I'll be back. Because you are promising consistency. You are proving that you aren't just visiting them once to stop the crying, but that you are building a relationship.
It is an ongoing, lifelong practice of self-reparenting. You are painstakingly building trust with your own nervous system. You are providing the unconditional presence that you needed then, proving to yourself that you will never, ever abandon your own needs again.
It is a beautiful, deeply internal promise. But we have to crash this beautiful internal meditation into the messy reality of the listener's external life.
Let's do it.
Because I can hear the resistance right now. The listener's thinking, okay, I sit in my mental white room, I hug my inner child, I validate my emotions. That's great. But when I open my eyes, I still have a partner who doesn't do their share.
The real world is still there.
Right. The kids still need to be fed in 20 minutes. The massive pile of laundry still exists on the bed. If I stop enduring, if I step off the treadmill of self-sacrifice to focus on healing myself, won't the whole house just fall apart?
The guilt and the fear of the system collapsing is the exact mechanism that keeps people trapped in the cycle for decades. People genuinely believe, if I don't endure, who will? I am the load-bearing pillar of this family. If I drop the ball to care for myself, the whole thing shatters.
And what is the psychological counter to that fear?
We have to look at the structural reality of family systems. Think of a family dynamic built entirely on the self-sacrifice and silent suffering of one person. It is like a massive, beautiful house built directly on top of loose sand.
It looks perfect from the street.
Yes, it looks fine for a while, maybe even years. The lawn is mowed, the windows are clean, but the foundation is fundamentally unstable. If that foundation, the self-sacrificing parent or partner, continues to exhaust themselves, continues to erode their own physical and mental health to prop up the house, the structural integrity of the entire building is eventually compromised.
It has to be.
The burnout is inevitable. And when that foundation finally crumbles under the immense weight, the entire house tilts and collapses anyway. The family suffers the exact fate the person was trying to prevent.
So by refusing to care for yourself, you are actually guaranteeing the collapse you are so afraid of.
Precisely. Therefore, abandoning the strategy of endless self-sacrifice is not abandoning your family. It is the exact literal opposite. Reinforcing your own emotional foundation, setting boundaries, and refusing to endure silent resentment is the only way to ensure the house remains standing in the long term.
Okay, conceptually, I agree. But let's get into the dirt of daily life. If I stop overfunctioning, if I stop micromanaging the shared calendar, if I stop aggressively doing everyone's laundry at 11 p.m. because I am finally prioritizing my inner child's need for rest, won't my family just be mad at me?
That's the fear.
Won't the house become a chaotic mess and won't everyone just resent the fact that I stopped being the superhero?
That is the logical fear. If I do less, they will be angry. But human relationships, especially intimate family systems, do not operate on simple math. They operate on emotional energy. And this is where we have to introduce the critical distinction between heavy love and pure love.
Oh, this concept is so good.
This insight fundamentally explains why the family dynamic naturally, almost miraculously, shifts when you heal your internal landscape.
Walk with me through this because it's fascinating. Think back to the pressurized pipe analogy we discussed earlier. You are full of suppressed anger, but you channel it into caretaking. When you do chores while sitting on a volcano of unexpressed resentment, the physical action you are performing, folding the laundry, aggressively scrubbing a pan, cooking dinner, is deeply laced with that suppressed emotional energy.
The action itself carries a heavy emotional weight.
It's like a radioactive signature. You might be completely silent, you might even have a tight smile on your face, but the energy radiating off of you is screaming, "Look at what I am doing for you," while you do nothing.
And human beings, especially children and intimate partners whose nervous systems are deeply attuned to yours, are incredibly sensitive to this emotional radiation. We have mirror neurons designed specifically to pick up on the unspoken emotional states of our tribe.
They feel it.
They subconsciously feel this heaviness every time you enter the room. They sense the silent, simmering resentment attached to every plate of food you set down and every folded shirt you hand them.
And what is the natural human reaction when someone pushes a heavy, resentful, guilt-laden burden toward you?
You back away. You instinctively distance yourself from the radiation.
Exactly. The family views the caretaking not as a genuine gift of love, but as a silent guilt trip. It feels like an accusation. So they reject it. They retreat to their rooms. They put on their headphones. They brush off your efforts because engaging with you means engaging with that terrifying, unspoken anger.
Which, tragically, just makes you feel more invisible and unappreciated.
The vicious cycle.
But here's the transformation. This is what happens when you actually commit to the inner child work. When you start visiting that white room, when you validate your own pain and stop requiring your family to magically notice your suffering, the internal pressure in the pipe drops dramatically.
Right, because you're releasing it.
You aren't desperately trying to squeeze your rage out through the chore faucet anymore.
So what happens to the chores?
The chores become just chores.
Mm.
Making a sandwich is just making a sandwich. Folding a shirt is just folding a shirt. When that exact same physical action is performed without the heavy radioactive baggage of suppressed resentment, it is fundamentally transformed. The family no longer feels the silent accusation. And because the energy is clear, the action is finally received by the family as what it always was meant to be, pure love.
And the incredible paradox of family systems theory is that when you stop suffocating them with heavy, demanding care, when you stop desperately needing their validation to soothe your unhealed wounds, you give them the emotional space to actually appreciate you.
Absolutely.
Because they aren't instinctively bracing for impact every time you clean the kitchen. They can actually see the clean kitchen.
Yeah.
And they can naturally, freely say, thank you.
The outside changes entirely because the inside changed. You didn't have to sit your partner down and demand that they become a fundamentally different person. You didn't have to institute a rigid chore chart. You simply changed the emotional frequency of the home by healing your own nervous system, and the family naturally, inevitably recalibrated to that healthier, lighter frequency.
That shifts the power dynamic completely. It takes you out of the role of the helpless victim waiting for the world to change and puts the agency entirely back into your own hands. You can start changing the dynamic of your household today without needing anyone else's permission or participation.
It's empowering.
It really is. So let's trace the arc of exactly what we've uncovered in this deep dive. We started by looking at the very real, very heavy exhaustion that so many parents and partners carry. We asked the seemingly irrational question, why do we cry over folding the laundry when nothing is wrong?
And we discovered that the frantic overcaring, the endless cycle of endurance, is not a personality quirk. It is a complex, desperately heavy mask for unexpressed childhood pain. The unconscious belief that endurance is correct has been quietly running the operating system of your life for decades.
We learned that by recognizing that pain, by realizing that the present-day laundry is just a trigger for a decades-old wound, we can stop fighting the wrong enemy. By mentally stepping into that quiet space and rescuing our younger selves from their loneliness, we release the pressure valve.
Yes, you stop weaponizing your chores.
And by doing that, by offering ourselves the safety we always craved, we fundamentally change the emotional radiation of our homes. The heavy love, laced with resentment, becomes pure love. And the house built on the crumbling sand of self-sacrifice is slowly, surely rebuilt on the bedrock of genuine self-compassion.
It is a profound journey from invisible suffering to active, powerful self-rescue.
It really is. And before we close, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to carry with you today. The underlying psychology we've explored tells us that true change starts from within, and that a much younger version of you is waiting patiently in that room for you to finally arrive.
Think deeply about this. If the overwhelming emotions you are feeling right now in your adult life, the sudden tears, the bone-deep exhaustion, the simmering anger, actually belong to a 5, 7, or 10-year-old version of yourself, what specific boundaries is that child begging you to set in your life today that you've been too afraid to enforce?
What does that child need you to say no to today so that they can finally feel safe? Thank you for walking through this incredibly deep water with us. If you found yourself in these reflections, take a quiet moment for yourself today. Visit that room. Tell them you came to get them. We'll see you next time.